South Africa has scored a key credibility win on the global stage after being removed from the European Union's high-risk list. This following its exit from the Financial Action Task Force greylist. Stanlib Chief Economist Kevin Lings joins us now with more insight. Kevin, thanks so much for your time today. Now, this, of course, a welcome move and a vote of confidence in South Africa's financial institutions. Of course, also coming as sentiment within the country improves. Let's talk about the significance of it all in reinforcing that shift.
I think it's obviously good news. And as you say, I think more importantly, it comes on the back of a systematic improvement in quite a wide range of economic fundamentals in South Africa. Part of those fundamentals are policy related to do with private-public partnerships, but some of them are simply to do with an improvement in confidence generally and a pickup in economic activity. So I think it helps us at this stage. It clearly is on the back of us being removed from the grey list. So if you look at when we went onto the EU's high risk list, I think it was about 6 months after we went onto the grey list, and us getting included in the EU list, it's fairly automatic. In other words, once you go on the grey list, then you're likely to get included in the EU list of high-risk countries. And the reverse is also true. And so now you get the benefit of being removed from some of these lists that flag countries for being a little bit more risky to deal with. So there's some immediate benefits that flow from that. The one is that the European companies that deal with us, particularly banks and investment institutions, they don't have to apply the same level of heightened scrutiny in doing these transactions. And it's not going to result in a massive inflow of money, but what it does just makes it easier to do business, and that's always welcome. And it also signals to a whole range of investors that South Africa is moving into a better space. And I think if you delve a little bit further, if you were sitting in Europe and you started to look at South Africa in a bit more detail, you'd see that other dynamics are also improving, and therefore it would be justified in being a bit more encouraged by the prospects for the country.
As you mentioned there, the move means EU banks can now reassess risk at their own discretion. What determines whether they actually ease up, and how long does that usually take, Kevin?
So obviously when you're doing business with the EU, and other areas have similar regulation, but with the EU, they are very mindful of protecting their own system. So the rules are they force the banks, they force the investment companies to ask for more information when they deal with South Africa. They have to, for example, understand more fully where's the money coming from, where's the money going to, what was the source of any revenue being invested or any funds being invested. So there's a lot more questions that are asked, and they have to do that because we are on the EU high risk. That's the law. And if they don't do that, then they fined quite heavily. So it's not worth their while trying to do business without asking for that additional information. And clearly, once you ask for all that additional information, it just delays the transaction. And it also, unfortunately, also puts off people from doing business with those countries because it's flagging that this country is a higher risk. There's more information required. You may say, look, let's not do business there. Let's look for another area where we may want to invest. And so it tends to then signal or flag that South Africa is a higher risk entity, and there's no upside to that. Now we're off that list. I think technically on the 29th of January, we'll be off the list, and therefore immediately it's easier to do business. That's instant. It doesn't mean that they won't ask questions. They will do a whole lot of due diligence when investing here, but it does signal that it's a much more easier jurisdiction to engage with.
Now, Kevin, getting off these lists is one thing, but staying off the lists are another thing. What does sustained progress need to look like?
Yeah, so that's critical. You know, once you're off the list, it doesn't mean you're going to simply stay off the list. These things are reviewed on a very regular basis. The Financial Action Task Force does quite a lot of work looking at a whole range of countries. And at any point, they can flag that you're not complying and therefore give you a certain amount of time to try and bring up your compliance to the right level. And if you don't do that, then you go back onto the grey list. So these things are constant. It's not like once you're off the list, then you're off the list forever. That's just not the case. You can easily lapse back on. And South Africa's got some clear areas that we need to improve, particularly prosecution. So we complied with a number of the issues that the Financial Action Task Force flagged. There was a whole range of categories. I think there were 22 categories or something. We did a lot of work. It took us a couple of years to comply with the requirements. So that's good. But there are outstanding issues. It's not as if they're saying everything is perfect. And the government, South African government acknowledges that. The National Treasury acknowledges that. And so there has to be ongoing work. And the clear area where we're not at the right level is how do we enforce these rules more effectively? In other words, do we prosecute people for money laundering, for corruption? Is there visible action being taken? And are we applying those rules very broadly or just within the financial system? So there's a lot of work that has to be implemented on an ongoing basis, and you don't want to go back onto these lists. It sends exactly the wrong signal. And clearly, we would want to improve everything, improve the credit rating, improve our competitiveness, improve our attractiveness as an investment destination, and they're all linked. So once you start to improve, you get a benefit all round. It starts to show up in a range of lists or assessments.
All right, let's leave it there. Kevin, thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights with us. That was Kevin Lings, Chief Economist at Stanlib.